Dawson. So this is Dawson. Yeah. So taffy, because it has two consonants. But let's see. Taste. So the E makes that say A. Taste. A trickier one is male.
All right, so today we went and spoke at a university teaching English. A lot of it was, well, first of all, we had two groups. The first group was with second year students in university, and then the other group we had was with fourth year students. So Zach and I spoke with the fourth year students, and a lot of it was just what's America like?
Yeah.
And there's a few times that I thought was kind of funny because a little backstory is you're not allowed to really talk about religious things and government
Buildings.
Yeah, government buildings, kind of government funded structures. And so one of the students asked us, what is a book that changed your life? And Zach and I, like, knowing that we're not really not allowed to speak about religious things, we're pretty unsure if we could mention the Bible. So we're just kind of trying to pull out some secular books. Yeah. Good thing Zach answered.
I only have one.
Yeah, I have no idea what he answered. Something.
Atomic Habits.
Atomic Habits. So.
Good book, but it's not really a Christian book.
Yeah. And then once we finished up, we didn't have a whole lot of time with the fourth year students because they had to study for exam that was coming up. So then we joined up with Ronaldo and Alex. They were teaching and the second year students, which it seemed like it was going fairly well. Alex was teaching some pretty good stuff.
I was learning.
I have to admit, I was learning some English today. And then we wrapped up. We ate some lunch at a Korean restaurant. And then we met Nargiza, which is one of our ministry hosts with crew. She met us at the mall called Bishkek Park.
Yeah.
And we just were there in the food court doing just kind of some evangelism. When we first got there, it was just kind of trying to seek out like one person that wasn't busy or something. And Zach looked over at the next table over us and said, "What about them?" And I kind of asked the Lord, and I was like, yeah, let's do it. So I just got my chair, went over to their table, and Marquise followed, translator, and Zach and I were like, can we sit down? And they're like, yeah. And so the first thing I asked when I sat down was like, are you guys in university? Are you in college? No, they're like, all answering yes. So I asked what they were in for. They said they were in for, what was it? IT. So then, just trying to build some conversation before trying to hammer in the gospel. I'm like, do you like IT? Do you like university? They're all like, no. And then it came about they all want to move out of Kyrgyzstan.
Yep.
And so then we started talking about, they wanted to talk about American culture, how Americans' culture is different than Kyrgyz culture, how the cities in America are different than the cities that we have experienced here.
And then one of the guys asked a question of he was like, is it legal to smoke marijuana there?
And this is where I said, bingo, this is why we called it this conversation.
Yeah.
So I went into my testimony with drug addiction and just kind of gave him a real quick gist. But I was like, I'm not going to hold back the truth either. So I just kind of like went through the list. And honestly, everyone that's watching this probably doesn't even know my testimony, so I'll do it real quick. So when I was 16, I got into a massive drug addiction, fell into marijuana, then went through a whole list of psychedelic drugs. Some includes like some shrooms, LSD, and then ended up taking DMT, which was laced, overdosed. My heart stopped completely. I was dead, and from that point forward, physically dead, but still had my spirit, of course. And so then I fell into a pit of demons, and as I fall into this pit of demons, basically, these demons are ripping apart everything in me, like tearing me to shreds. I have pride overcoming envy, anger, lust, and these demons were just kind of like putting everything that they wanted into me, and it was all about identity, right? These demons were the ones that have influenced all my actions, the reason I couldn't get out of addiction. There's addictions outside of drugs that I was battling, and really I found this, all these demons were the ones that was influencing that. So I got to talk about just a little bit the power of demons in people's lives, and how like drugs are not of God. This guy that took a lot of interest in drugs definitely was probably a drug user, otherwise he wouldn't have had that much interest in it. So the part of my testimony that I really try to press in is just like God, not Allah, God, Yahweh, pulled me out of this pit, brought me back to consciousness before I started my heart again, and then once I felt my heart like start beating, I knew like God was telling me to turn my life around. So I basically just told him like, that is the reason I do what I do, right? That is the reason I'm talking to you now. That, God told me to tell the world about him. And I said, that includes you, there's a couple other interesting questions that were brought up. Because after I shared my testimony, Zach really pressed into like Islamic beliefs, the Quran, how it doesn't match up with the Bible. If you want to share something about that.
Yeah, and so like after his testimony, I actually asked them if they had any questions about his testimony, and they really only asked like one question, and I think then at that point they mentioned like there was 8 of them and there were 8 Muslims. They mentioned that they were all Muslim at the table, and so then I proceeded to ask them like, I wanted to kind of ask a few questions about how much of the Quran they've read and different things. And I think there was only one that had like really ever studied the Quran, and the Injil, which is what it says in the Quran. It's actually just the 4 Gospels, like Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And there was only one girl there that knew the Quran by heart, and like she could like recite 20% of the Quran, which is like inspiring because I cannot do 5% of the Bible, let alone she does 20% of the Quran, which is crazy. But yeah, I asked him about like chapter 4 in the Quran. It's chapter 4, verse 157. It says that Jesus was not killed, nor did he die of like any kind of death that was like put upon him, or crucifixion or anything. And I asked him about that verse, and how can they like believe the Quran even if that one verse like can be proven through history, without the Bible, without letters to the church, without anything. The fact that Jesus died on the cross can be proven through just historical facts. And even atheists, agnostics, atheists, and even Muslim, there's a Muslim historian, all who have said that Jesus 100% died on the cross. There is no doubting it. And then like some other things came up, and they all kind of like really started squirming when I started talking about the Quran, because a lot of them aren't like strong in their faith, and a lot of them are just Muslims through association. Which reminds me a lot, I mean, in a sense, and I hate to say it like this, but like a lot of Christians in America are just Christians because of association as well. And you can't argue a faith that you don't really believe in. It's something that's been put upon you. If you don't know your why to your faith, like they didn't know their why to their faith, they weren't able to talk about it, and they didn't want to talk about it because they didn't know their why to their faith.
Yeah, a lot of the Muslims here are just nominal Muslims. There was only one girl that we were talking to. She had a 20% ability to recite 20% of the Quran
Verbally.
out of memory, which
Crazy.
That's impressive.
Crazy.
That really is impressive. But there was something that kind of struck me interesting, or I was interested when one of the girls asked me a question, and it was like, it seems like since the beginning of this conversation to now, like your mood has changed. Like you seem sad, and
And at this point,
yeah.
in the conversation, I'd asked if they had any questions about what I had just said about everything I just told you, and basically they started asking about American culture again because they wanted to drop the subject.
Yeah. They just wanted to change the subject, which that made me really sad. Honestly, it kind of pissed me off because I was like, oh, like really? Like we're talking about some serious matters, and you just want to talk about like sports in America or something. But going back to after part of the testimony, after I shared my testimony, like I shared about like the 3 things God did is He brought me back to life, He raised me from the dead, He withdrew all addictions that I had dealt with over the years, and like even including those outside of drugs. And He also, like drugs are a gateway and a door. I always like to say that the drugs are a key to a door you can't close by yourself, right? God only can close those doors. And so I told him, like, God never closed that door. Like, God has allowed me to still see into the spiritual realm. And, like, that came into play. So going back to this girl's question of, like, why has your mood changed? I wasn't going to really answer her question directly because she wasn't really open to what my response would have been. So I just said, oh, I'm just listening. And yeah, I just left it at that. I'm just listening. But I didn't say who I was listening to, right? So I was doing a lot of intercession in that moment. And what I was seeing is it was as if, well, not as if, there were these hands that were covering 7 of those Muslims. And there's only one of the Muslims they were speaking to. Her ears were wide open. But for 7, no, hold on. There was 8 individuals at the table. One was this older woman, unrelated to this group.
Yeah, that is true.
And then there was 7 college students. 6 of them had like these hands covering their ears, while this one girl exactly my age, she said that she was studying into faith, searching, and like she was super interested in my testimony.
Yeah.
And you could just tell like the other people, other peers are just kind of shutting her out a little bit. She was a little afraid to ask questions. But like there's a lot of times where like there'd just be like direct eye contact, like she'd just be fully engaged. And so I just like was praying over her, and like I really like felt the Lord say like one day, like it may not be her moment now, but one day like she will be mine. Like she is mine, but like she will know me and call me Lord. I was like, amen.
That's it.
But just in that moment, like it was just kind of heavy because it's just like I'm seeing like the spiritual warfare play out on these Muslims. Like these demons are holding them back from listening and actually understanding. They're just so like indoctrinated in their beliefs. Even if they are nominal, it's all they've ever known. And so they're not willing to pick up new information or to actually receive it. But nonetheless, it was still a seed planted, and I'm just glad that we had the opportunity to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So after these college students left, they dismissed themselves. They said we have to leave.
Mm-hmm.
This other woman that was not a part of this group, this mother said, I'd love to have your contacts so you can get in contact with my son. And then she also mentioned her daughters. So yeah, that's just going to be a continued ministry that I really hope that God blesses.
Yeah.
It's really, really cool because it's not like, I don't know if she's Muslim, but it's not like she didn't know we weren't Christian, or we were Christians. Like, we were pretty open, pretty direct. Like, she was mentioning, like, my kids could learn English from you.
Yep.
But she also knows, like, by us teaching them English, we're also going to be telling them the gospel.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like she's not shy from that, which is really cool, So.
Yeah, because every question that the people asked us about, like, what was our favorite music, and all this stuff, we pointed it back to God, because in reality, that it is part of who we are, but we were just so open and direct, and she was just so open to hey, please, meet my son and meet my daughter, and come teach, speak with them English and stuff. And so I'm really excited to get to know them and share the gospel with them too.
Amen. Come on.
It's gonna be great.
But yeah, that's pretty much all I have for you guys for today. Just figured it would be a really cool thing just to share. Because really, it was definitely appointed by God to speak to them. And really, some fruit came about it because of that lady.
Yeah.
It'll just be continued. It would be really cool. So I'll be excited to update you guys on how that goes. But yeah, I appreciate you guys tuning in and just supporting my team and I. Yeah, it's been really great ministry here. Even though we haven't had a whole lot of ministry, so far Kyrgyzstan is off to a really good start.
Yeah.
So I'm excited for just the times to come.
Yeah,
So,
for sure.
all right, till next time.
See ya.
Ciao.